Thanks so much for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. President Obama has made a direct appeal to Iranians on a nuclear deal. In a video, the president told the people and leaders of Iran that nuclear talks presented the best opportunity in decades for the two countries to agree on a deal. Meanwhile, Republican lawmakers have pledged to enforce new sanctions on Iran if an agreement is not reached by March 31st. Charlene Aaron has the story.
In a video message, President Obama told Tehran that another moment to pursue better relations between Iran and the U.S. may not come again soon.
The days and weeks ahead will be critical. Our negotiations have made progress, but gaps remain. And there are people in both our countries and beyond who oppose a diplomatic resolution. My message to you, the people of Iran, is that together we have to speak up for the future we seek.
The video was released after mixed messages emerged from nuclear talks in Switzerland, where Secretary of State John Kerry and his Iranian counterpart hailed progress.
This moment may not come again soon. I believe that our nations have a historic opportunity to resolve this issue peacefully, an opportunity we should not miss.
But according to the Wall Street Journal, talks have reportedly hit a snag over ending sanctions. As the March 31st deadline nears for an agreement, Iran wants UN sanctions lifted as the deal begins to take effect. But the U.S. and its European allies demand that sanctions be suspended or phased out over a period of years. Critics say the sanctions have hurt Iran, which is why they're at the talks, and that the sanctions should not be eased up. The deal would reportedly allow Iran to keep some nuclear centrifuges working that Iran says would be used for peaceful purposes. Republicans warn that a possible deal could let Iran develop nuclear weapons, and some have been going right to the key question of the possible deal. Will it let Iran go ahead and build those weapons?
Are they or are they not about to make a very bad deal that will allow the Iranians, one of the worst regimes in the world, to continue to have their nuclear infrastructure?
As critics continue to raise serious questions about the proposed deal, members of both parties say no matter what the Obama administration wants to do, Congress should review any proposed deal with Iran so they can decide if it would really stop Iran's nuclear program. If no deal is reached, Iran could go ahead with its nuclear projects, and critics wonder just how serious Iran is about stopping that program anyway, deal or no deal. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has drawn fire for saying on Election Day that foreign-backed leftist groups were busing Arabs to the polls to defeat him. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas now calls that racist and suggests a two-state solution in the Middle East is impossible. And the Obama administration has threatened to pull U.S. support from Israel at the UN. That came after Netanyahu's pledge that a Palestinian state would not happen under his watch. He says his backing of a Palestinian state has always depended on several conditions: Palestinian recognition of Israel as a Jewish state, defensible borders, and a united Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Abbas has rejected all of those conditions. On the Senate floor Thursday, Florida Senator Marco Rubio launched a scorching attack on the Obama administration's treatment of Israel and Netanyahu.
This president is making a historic mistake. Allies have differences. But allies like Israel, when you have a difference with them and it is public, it emboldens their enemies to launch more rockets out of southern Lebanon and Gaza, to launch more terrorist attacks, to go to international forums and delegitimize Israel's right to exist. And this
A Palestinian council decided Thursday to pursue war charges against Israel at the International Criminal Court. The Islamic State is claiming responsibility for the deadly attack on Tunisia's National Museum. 23 people were killed, many were tourists. In a statement Thursday, ISIS described the attack as, quote, a blessed invasion of one of the dens of infidels and vice in Muslim Tunisia. Tunisian authorities claimed the two gunmen had no clear links to the Islamic State and that the pair were merely inspired by the group. Nigeria's president said areas dominated by Boko Haram will, quote, be retaken in a month. President Goodluck Jonathan told the BBC the group is getting weaker and weaker by the day. Nigerian officials say they've retaken 38 towns this week, but the battle isn't over. According to the AFP, dozens of Nigerian women who were forced to marry Boko Haram militants were slaughtered in the northeast region of the country on Thursday. It happened just before government troops invaded their town. Eyewitnesses say the Islamic militants killed the women because they feared if they died, their wives might remarry non-believers. An upstate New York school is apologizing for reciting the Pledge of Allegiance in Arabic. This comes after Jewish parents and others complained. The pledge was read in Arabic during Wednesday morning's announcements at Pine Bush High School. That's about 65 miles northwest of New York City. The district superintendent told the Times-Herald-Record of Middletown that she received complaints from residents who lost relatives in Afghanistan and from Jewish parents.
Well, I think it's just stupid because the pledge is for America and soldiers fight for that pledge to be said in English, so I think it should be said in English.
I think it was pretty disrespectful to the country because everything that happened between our country and them, and then we're saying our country's pledge in their language, so.
The principal apologized to the offended students. The pledge was being recited in different languages for National Foreign Language Week. A government panel investigating the Sandy Hook school massacre suggests that more regulation of homeschooling may prevent another tragedy. In December of 2012, 20 first graders and 6 adults were gunned down at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut. 20-year-old Adam Lanza carried out the deadly rampage before taking his own life. The Sandy Hook Commission has recommended greater oversight of homeschooling of children with special needs, even though Lanza spent most of his life in public school. Homeschool advocates say officials will look for almost any excuse to regulate home education.
But this recommendation, if followed, would basically usurp the rights of parents in this area. And then bureaucrats, government bureaucrats, educational people would be able to have say in how a child was being homeschooled. And we think that is more than wrong. It's also based on wrong ideas. Adam Lanza was not homeschooled. And so this commission should not be using, that tragedy to try to gain more control over families when there's no problem.
Adam Lanza was only homeschooled briefly at the age of 16. A new report says government's immigration officers set free another 30,000 immigrants with criminal records last year. The Washington Times reports that came after the 36,000 released in 2013. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency oversees the detention and removal of undocumented immigrants. The agency says it doesn't have much choice on who it can release because immigrants who can't go back to their home countries cannot be held indefinitely. The ICE says it is taking steps to cut down on the problem. Gun ownership is lower than it's ever been across the U.S., but there's one demographic that's holding steady and catching the attention of manufacturers, creating not only a new sales challenge, but an opportunity. Our Caitlin Burke reports.
The firearm industry is a man's world no longer. With gun sales slowing, gun makers are increasingly turning their focus to women, who are buying in a big way.
In the last decade, we've seen a huge increase in the number of women purchasing firearms. In fact, they're the fastest growing segment of firearms owners in the country.
The rise in firearms sales largely tied to self-defense, women increasingly wanting to protect themselves.
I want to be safe and I want to feel protected. And I want to feel like I could protect my family if it came down to that.
I want to be able to do that with confidence and without hesitation.
But once that protection is acquired, experts say many women realize it's not just about defense. It can also be a fun hobby.
A lot of women find that they enjoy shooting, and so then they'll take follow-on courses in marksmanship and target shooting. And many of them will even continue further and do competitive shooting.
Firearm training and safety instructor Greg Coker says that not only are many women becoming passionate about shooting, they tend to be naturals.
I've found that they generally shoot better than men. Now I know I'll get a lot of pushback on that, but they don't have any bad habits. They don't have the man gene, so to speak, and they listen very intently, and then they apply that.
Gun manufacturers are making changes to their products to appeal to a largely growing female market.
Gun manufacturers are aware that there is a huge increase in interest among women to own a firearm, and so you'll see them sometimes design holsters or concealed carry purses that are more towards a women's body.
Some other changes include firearm models with smaller frames and custom colors.
I use a lot of the Smith & Wesson Shield pistols and the bodyguards. They seem to fit their hands a lot better, so they shoot better with a gun that's fit to them.
The women's market now a force, and one that's being taken seriously by the industry. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Dallas, Texas.
I just know that God is there. At some point, you're not alone. And that's really comforting.
God's Not Dead was a box office surprise. Now we hear from the cast and crew of the follow-up movie, Do You Believe? After this. The ministry of evangelist Creflo Dollar has stopped seeking donations for a luxury private jet. Last week, a video on the ministry's website asked people to help the ministry buy a Gulfstream G650 airplane, an airplane valued at $65 million. The video said that if all of the ministry's partners sewed $300 each, they'd be able to acquire this jet in a very short period of time. The video has since been taken down, and Dollar's publicist says he is taking commercial flights and that the canceled campaign is not representative of what Creflo Dollar stands for. In family entertainment news, God's Not Dead broke box office records and became the highest-grossing independent film in 2014. Today, its creators follow up that Christian film with the release of Do You Believe? I recently sat down with the cast and crew to talk about what drew them to this project.
Young man, you believe in the cross of Christ, son?
I'm a pastor, so.
You didn't answer my question. I asked you if you believe in the cross of Christ.
Critics call Do You Believe a faith version of the Oscar award-winning film Crash.
He loves you. He knows you. And he suffered and died on the cross so we could be forgiven.
This movie follows a dozen characters, moving in different directions, all longing for something more, as their lives unexpectedly intersect. The all-star cast includes Lee Majors, Ted McGinley, and Sybil Shepherd.
It's not funny, JD. We've lost enough already, and I'm not ready to lose you too.
Sybil, when we meet your character, Terry, in this film, she is a grief-stricken mom. How would you describe where she is in life?
Frozen. Frozen because she's not letting herself really feel her grief. It's too deep. And that's what made me want to play this part, was the idea of going through that transition where my character faces her grief about losing that child.
Ted, you play Matthew, a pastor. What's different about this pastor? Watching the film, I didn't feel like he was your normal preacher. What's different about it?
It starts off with me putting what looks like blood on the cross and turning around to the audience really with just a very straight face and sort of confronting all of them. So it's a little bit uncomfortable at first. And then you see that he begins to come around, but he is a guy who is going to tell you the truth because that's what he just encountered.
Do You Believe is the latest project from Hollywood actor and producer David White.
This film comes out on the heels of God's Not Dead, the highest-grossing independent film of 2014. Did that surprise you?
I think it surprised everybody. Yeah, when we released the trailer in October, like 6 months before it came out, the trailer was shared between 5 and 10 million times. It was the #1 shared page for that week on Facebook. So we had an idea, that we had something special, and then the movement leading up to the release was really quite incredible. But never in a million years did we ever expect that it would do as well as it did, and that people all over the world would support it. And you'd see these London double-decker buses with God's Not Dead on it. It was truly a dream, and also just truly a dream to see how God used that movie in so many different people's lives.
That's David's prayer for this film. His Pure Flix production company has produced nearly 90 faith films in the 9 years since it started.
You attract some really big names. We're talking Academy Award winners, Golden Globe winners to your films. What is it about what you're doing at Pure Flix that's calling them in?
I think it's the script first and foremost. It moves them when they read it. I got a call from Delroy Lindo right after he read it, and his agent he was like acting the role out on the phone to his agent saying, I want to do this. And so I think that's how that type of talent comes into this. It's because it's not like the money that we pay is extraordinary. Obviously, there's so many other places that pay a lot more money, but people are really moved by the story.
I was once asked if you were ever accused of being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? I don't know.
And Do You Believe delivers a story of both intensity and inspiration. For both of you, the name of the film is Do You Believe? Curious, what is it that you believe that sustains you through tough times?
I just know that God is there. I have no doubt. So in my darkest, deepest hours of, pain and questioning, whatever comes along in your life, that at some point, you're not alone. And that's really comforting.
I was raised in the Episcopal Church, and then I chose to be confirmed. I sang in the choir, and so my faith was always there. I think being confirmed, that choice, because you don't have to get confirmed. And I still have that prayer book by my bed.
Now listen to me.
Up next, we'll get another take on Do You Believe, plus family-friendly movie reviews for Insurgent and Cinderella. That's all coming up next. The weekend is here, and you may be looking for some family entertainment at the theater. Here with our weekly movie reviews is Bob Waliszewski from Plugged In Online. That's the entertainment review department at Focus on the Family. Bob, let's start with Insurgent, the second film in the Divergent series. Is that one safe for teens?
Well, we'll start with our rating. We gave it a 2.5 out of 5. The first Divergent movie we gave a 3. I think that's on the bubble. This one's not even at the bubble level. A little bit about it. Triss and her boyfriend, by the way, his name is 4, just like the number, are on the lam, and they're certainly realizing that the powers to be in this Hunger Games-like dystopian society certainly don't have their best interest in mind and don't have the populace's best interest in mind. Now, Triss is willing to sacrifice. She is actually a very interesting, positive character. She shows grace and mercy. But the reason it got knocked down another 0.5 point, not only because the violence can be not quite Hunger Games level, but right up there, is that Triss and her boyfriend have a sensual scene in this film that was quite disappointing. Add to that some point-blank range assassinations, not gory, because the gore part happens off camera, but our imaginations sometimes fill in the blank. And I think that 2.5 out of 5 is the justified rating on this one.
All right, well, just before the break, we heard about the new Christian film called Do You Believe? What'd you think of it?
You know, they call this the follow-up to God's Not Dead, and it is, but not in the sense that many of our viewers will think. This is not God's Not Dead Part 2, by the way. And God's Not Dead, let's face the reality, was a surprise hit in Hollywood. Not just for the secular folks in Hollywood, but even for moi and many Christian reviewers who were very, very surprised that it did $60+ million at the box office, and I'm glad it did. This one, however, follows a pastor who encounters a man carrying a cross in Chicago. The gangbangers say, ask that man, are you ready to die? And he says, yes, he is. It challenges that pastor in his own faith. In other words, this film is taking the scripture about faith without works is dead and puts that on display on the screen so that it might inspire all of us to think, okay, I have faith, but what do I do next? We like this film a lot. We gave it a hearty 4.5 out of 5 for family friendliness, and I'm glad that families have something in the faith-based space this weekend at the theaters.
Indeed. Well, we know that Cinderella has been a big hit at the box office. Remind us real quick why you liked it so much.
Wow, made almost 70 million opening weekend, and Disney's on a roll now. McFarlane USA was their last film. We gave that one a 4.5. We gave Cinderella a 4.5. Well, I like it not only because it tells the classic tale that Disney did so well in the animated version, but in this version, they really highlight 2 virtues: kindness and being courageous. And it's kind of preachy, but it's preachy in such a good way that I think families will really be rooting for this one.
All right, 2 out of 3 this week. Thank you, Bob.
You bet.
It is the first day of spring, but winter refuses to go away in some areas. Some northeastern states are expecting several inches of snow today. The National Weather Service says New York will likely be hit the hardest, but south central Pennsylvania will be in the bullseye of the storm and possibly could get up to 10 inches of snow. Western Maryland could get slammed with up to 8 inches. Ouch. Well, finally, this Friday, a faith message to uplift and jumpstart your weekend, whether you're facing a storm or not. It's my hope that this will encourage you to make the best of this day and the days ahead. I was thinking, I'm usually in a lot of pain after an intense workout, but I'm stronger. The same applies to working your prayer muscle. Spend serious time in that secret closet today. It is indeed a great day to work your faith in that secret place. God is ready, willing, and He is waiting to speak to you. That's going to do it now for CBN NewsWatch. You can find more of our exclusive coverage of the issues you care most about at cbnnews.com. If you want to hear from you, do it on Facebook or at CBN News on Twitter. Have a wonderful weekend.